Hello and welcome to a short lesson on solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. In this lesson I'll introduce the formula and then we'll work through 4 examples of solving quadratic equations. To begin then, to solve the general quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And this is the standard way we set up a quadratic equation with all 3 terms on one side equal to 0 on the other side. Now the a is the amount of x squareds we have, the b is the amount of x's we have, and the c is the constant term on the end. And if the equation is set up in this form, then the formula for solving it is x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. And so it just reduces to a problem of substitution, putting the values of a, b and c in this formula. We could prove this formula algebraically using a technique called completing the square, and if you'd like to see a proof of this, have a look on the forums on this website. Our first example. Solve x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. The first thing I'm going to do is write down what a, b and c are. So a is the number of x squareds we have, 1 in this case. B is the number of x's we have, minus 5. And c is the constant term on the end, so c equals 6. And now I'm going to substitute those numbers in this formula. So x will be equal to minus b. Well, if b is minus 5, then minus b will be plus 5. Plus or minus the square root, let's get some straight lines drawn, the square root of b squared minus 4ac, so that's minus 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6, all divided by 2a, which is 2 times 1 in this case. And now we look to simplify. We've got plus 5 plus or minus the square root of minus 5 squared is 25, and then we've got minus 4 times 1 times 6. One negative involved, so it gives us a negative term. 4 times 1 times 6 is 24, and 2 times 1 is 2. So x is equal to plus 5 plus or minus, now 25 minus 24 is 1, and the square root of 1 is 1. So it's plus 5 plus or minus 1 divided by 2, which means the two answers are x equals plus 5 plus 1 divided by 2 and x equals plus 5 minus 1 divided by 2. Plus 5 plus 1 is 6, divided by 2 is 3, and plus 5 minus 1 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. So the solution of this equation is x equals 3 or x equals 2. Now in reality it would have been easier to solve this particular equation by factorising. I could have factorised the left hand side and got x minus 3 multiplied by x minus 2 is equal to 0. Two numbers that multiply together to give the plus 6 and add together to give the minus 5. And we can get the answers by setting each bracket equal to 0 in turn. If x minus 3 is 0, then that implies that x equals 3. And if x minus 2 is 0, that implies that x equals 2. So we get the same answers whether we solve the equation by factorising or by using the formula. Our second example is also one that could be done by factorising, and that will prove a useful check at the end. So let's begin again by writing down the values of a, b and c. A, the number of x squareds, is equal to 1. B, the number of x's, is equal to 2. And c, the constant on the end, is minus 15. So we have to watch the signs here. Normally the number in front of the x squares will be positive, otherwise you could take everything to the other side where it would be positive. The x's and the constant, sometimes the positive, sometimes the negative. Now let's substitute these values in the formula, and we get x is equal to minus b, which is minus 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. B squared will be 2 squared, and we've got minus 4 times 1 times, and I'll put it in a bracket since it's negative, times minus 15, divided by 2a, which is 2 times 1. So x is equal to minus 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared is 4. Now this time you'll see we've got two negatives multiplied together, minus 4 and minus 15. Two negatives multiplied together give a positive, so we've got 4 times 1 times 15 is 60, minus 4 times minus 15 turns that to plus 60. And that's over 2 times 1, which is 2. So x is equal to minus 2 plus or minus 4 plus 60 is 64. The square root of 64 is 8. So it's minus 2 plus or minus 8 divided by 2. So the two answers, x equals minus 2 plus 8, all divided by 2, or x equals minus 2 minus 8, all divided by 2, which gives us minus 2 plus 8 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. Minus 2 minus 8 is minus 10, minus 10 divided by 2 is minus 5. So the solution is x equals 3 or x equals minus 5. Let's demonstrate that answer is correct by factorising. And we would factorise this expression to give an x in each bracket. We want two numbers that multiply to minus 15 and add to plus 2. Well, that would be plus 5 and minus 3. Plus 5 times minus 3 is minus 15, and collected together plus 5 minus 3 gives the number in front of the x plus 2. So once we've got it factorised, either the first bracket is 0, and that would imply that x equals minus 5, or the second bracket is 0, and that would imply that x equals 3. So you can see we get the same answers again, x equals minus 5 and x equals 3. Now, not all quadratic equations factorise, and you'll recognise on a GCSE paper an equation that doesn't factorise when they ask you to give the answer to 3 significant figures. If they say that, you're not going to get whole number answers or even fractional answers. So the last two examples we're going to look at, we'll be giving our answers to 3 significant figures. But we'll begin the same way. We'll write down a, b and c. A is equal to 3, the amount of x squareds. B is equal to minus 5, the amount of x's. And the constant term on the end, c, is minus 7. Substitute these values in the formula and we get x is equal to minus b, which makes that plus 5, minus 5 is plus 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is minus 5 squared, minus 4 times 3 times, and again I'll put it in a bracket because it's negative, minus 4 times 3 times minus 7, all divided by 2a, which is 2 times 3. So x is equal to plus 5 plus or minus the square root of minus 5 squared is 25. That term is always positive. A minus times a minus is a plus, or a plus times a plus is a plus. So the first term under the square root sign is always positive. This next one, I've got two negatives multiplied together again, so that's going to make this second term positive. 4 times 3 is 12, 12 times 7 is 84. And on the bottom, 2 times 3 is 6. So we have x is equal to plus 5 plus or minus 25 plus 84 is 109, so it's the square root of 109 divided by 6. And it's at this point we need the calculator. X is equal to plus 5 plus root 109 divided by 6, or x equals plus 5 minus root 109 divided by 6. So we'll use the calculator for this first one. X is equal to 5 plus the square root of 109, and on this calculator you put the 109 in before you hit the square root sign, equals, divided by 6 equals, and to three significant figures it's 2.57. So x equals 2.57. And our second answer we have 5 minus the square root of 109 equals, divided by 6 equals minus 0.907 to three significant figures. Minus 0.907. So there's the answers to this particular equation. X is 2.57 or minus 0.907. And now our final example, example 4. Solve 5x squared plus 11x plus 3 equals 0. Again, we begin by writing down a, b and c. A is equal to 5, the number of x squareds. B is equal to 11, the number of x's. And c is equal to 3, the constant on the end. Substitute in the formula and we get x is equal to minus b will be minus 11 plus or minus the square root of 11 squared, which is 121. Always use a calculator there. Minus 4ac is minus 4 times 5 times 3. All divided by 2a is 2 times 5. Moving on to simplify this, x equals minus 11 plus or minus the square root of 121 minus 4 times 5 times 3. 4 times 5 is 20, times 3 is 60. Notice this time this term is negative because we didn't have a double negative being multiplied together in this second term. And the bottom is 2 times 5, which is 10. So x is equal to minus 11 plus or minus 121 minus 60 is 61, so it's root 61 divided by 10. So our two answers are x equals minus 11 plus root 61 divided by 10, and the other one x equals minus 11 minus root 61 divided by 10. So let's get ready to put the answers in when we work them out on the calculator. Minus 11 plus the square root of 61 equals, divided by 10 equals, and to three significant figures, that's minus 0.319. Minus 0.319. And our second answer, minus 11 minus root 61 equals, divided by 10 equals, minus 1.88 to three significant figures. Minus 1.88. So the answer to example 4, x equals minus 0.319 or x equals minus 1.88. And that completes this short lesson on solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. You'll now find an exercise for you to practice this technique yourself.